Hi, salam sajatera kepada semua. Salamat datang ke episode Inang Pamantasan. Secara atas talian, di mana pembelajaran tidak pernah berakhir, inilah PNU Talks. But before we move on to the meat of the topic, may I invite everyone to leave their questions, thoughts, and probably insights in the comment section below. And also, please do not ever forget to like and share our episode this morning. Some fast facts about me. I graduated in 2018 from the Philippine Normal University with a degree in Bachelor in English Education. Also, I am currently completing my Master of Science in Development Communication, minor in Development Management and Governance at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Currently, I am teaching at the De La Salle University Integrated School. Let me begin by emphasizing this. As a teacher, our exposure to different cultures and situations should be part of a bigger collection of experiences intended to benefit our classrooms, may they be virtual or physical. And I think this is true even for pre-service teachers. It's not just for in-service teachers, because in general, as teachers, I feel that we have the responsibility to enrich our experiences by exposing ourselves to different cultures, different people, contexts, worldviews, perspectives, even languages. Because at the end of the day, our main objective is not to teach theories and concepts inside the classroom. Our main objective is to prepare the students to face the real world. And apparently, that's very difficult to do if teachers have very limited experience of the real world. Because as you can see, wisdom, that wisdom that we share to our students could only be acquired through direct exposure, through personal experience, through even authentic relationships with people of different contexts, backgrounds, even cultures. Okay? So if we wish to become the kind of teacher who makes a difference in the lives of his or her students, it's inevitable to expose ourselves to different, contexts and cultures in order to enrich our experiences that will lead us to becoming, a teacher with stronger personality and a teacher who could share wisdom, not just, by the book knowledge to the students. Okay? And I know that a lot of you know this already. I think all of us know this already, that inside the classroom, students don't necessarily gauge you based on the things that you know, like these concepts that we obtain from the books. No, because Google, encyclopedias, all of the resources are available to our students already. To students nowadays are looking for teachers who are real, teachers who have rich experiences, teachers who can share a lot to them, who can share their insights about the world. Because at the end of the day, when these students go outside the classroom and these students graduate from school, these theories and concepts are difficult to apply if they haven't encountered them through the stories that we share as teachers inside the classroom. Okay? In relation to that, I have 3 goals for this morning. The first goal is to inspire both pre and in-service teachers to acquire cultural curiosity. So I want every one of you to become curious about how people behave. Why do they think this way or that way? Why do they act that way? Why do people behave that way in general? Okay? So at the end of this lecture, at the end of this short sharing or kwentuhan, I wish to impart to you my experience about being culturally curious and how it enriched my performance, hopefully, inside my classroom. Okay? Secondly, I wish to emphasize the importance of creating networks in ASEAN and contextualizing classroom lessons, because in the K-12 curriculum, I think our lessons are not limited to local setting. The K-12 curriculum is designed to help students prepare to become global citizens. So it's also important to harness ASEAN networks in order to provide our students with, real experiences, real scenarios from real people. And lastly, I wish to demonstrate how cultural exposure enriches pre-service training and in-service performance. Okay? Now, let's try to dig deeper on our banner concept for this morning, which is cultural curiosity. Now, how can we say that someone is actually curious? Curiosity is the expressed intent to discover things that are new to you. It's um it's showing your intent to explore, to encounter things that are foreign to you, which means that when you are curious, you begin to be open-minded about any possibilities. No? This shows that when you are curious, you don't have any prejudice in mind. You don't have any biases in mind because you're open to any and all possibilities. So, in relation to our discussion for this morning, when you say that someone is culturally curious, no, you're basically saying that this person is open, no, to explore and to discover and to engage in new experiences, to engage in the unknown. Because when someone is culturally curious, you see, according to Dolman et al. In 2020, no, cultural curiosity acknowledges that one cannot know exactly what life has been for people they engage with, nor can they fully understand their relationships with their culture, history, and traditions. Which means that when you are culturally curious, you don't necessarily box certain groups of people or certain people to their cultural categories. Like, for example, when you go to Indonesia, no, and meet Indonesians there, you don't necessarily say that these people are like this or like that because that's what we read in books or that's what we see in their government websites. No, the characteristics no provided in any other sources that we have encountered prior to going to Indonesia. But instead, no, cultural curiosity is a conscious decision and commitment to understand and acknowledge the unique experiences of individuals. So when you are culturally curious, you're seeing humans with faces. You're seeing humans with different experiences, with different interpretations of their experiences. Thus, they have their own worldviews that are equally valid. Okay? And this is very, very important because um, when we start to acknowledge that each individual is different from one another, we begin to find out how we could better communicate with them, how we could better relate with them, how we could better engage with them. Because after all, it's only after we have established authentic relationship that foreign people or people from different backgrounds will begin to open up to us. Okay? And inside the classroom, cultural curiosity is also very, very important because while we have, sections in our classes, like sometimes our sections are homogeneous, like section 1, section 2, or whether we are like teaching in all boys schools or all girls schools, no, we tend to think that the general profile that we know of the class is enough. But actually, inside the classroom, we also have to acknowledge that we could never fully or exactly know the characteristics, the cultural backgrounds, inclinations of our students if we don't engage with them. So we have to be curious about them. Of course, we don't intend to be pushy and all that, but what we want is to engage them in discussions, engage them in conversations that will fully maximize the establishment of real and authentic relationships between you as a teacher and the student. So in that way, you would know how to address the student's needs. No, you would understand why the student behaves this way or that way, how the student thinks. No, why does she or he listen to these kinds of messages and not to other kinds of messages? No, because you already have a connection with the student. No, and this is very very important because as you know, in my practicum experience, I have met, Indonesians who are Christians, who are Muslims, who are conservatives, who are liberal, Indonesians who are, part of the international program. So basically, they're richer than others. I also was able to handle classes under the regular program. I was able to handle students who were, boarders in school, who are part of the military program and who are not part of the military program. So I was able to deal with students of different profiles. And what I understood, what I learned from that experience is that while these students are, clustered inside the classroom, like they're grouped together according to their characteristics, no, we could not assign just one general label, no, to them, no, and paint the culture of the classroom as if it's like the same for everyone. No, because talking to these students, I realized that they have their own individual, experiences. They have their own individual interpretations of things that um, some approaches may be effective for particular students, but not effective for some students. Okay, and I know that as teachers, um, we know this already, no? And cultural curiosity would help us further deepen, no, not just our relationships, but also our pedagogy. No, because we become, more receptive to the needs and profiles of our students. So now, maybe you were asking why become culturally conscious of um, Southeast Asian countries. Primarily because one, we have similar ancestry, and when you go back to your Philippine history classes, you would remember that we're part of the same groups of people. We are all migrants in Southeast Asia, no, and our ancestry traces its roots, no, from the southern part of China and parts of Taiwan, no, and also we have similar histories. We have similar stories, like um countries in Southeast Asia have experienced oppression. Except for Thailand, we have experienced, colonization. So we share the same experiences and history. So there is definitely something that we could relate to, no, with each other. Next, we have integrated societies. Beginning in 2015, I'm not sure if you've heard the term ASEAN integration, but the goal is to make us, ASEAN citizens more mobile. So we could go wherever we want, work wherever we want, within the Southeast Asian region. No, and lastly, no, this is very, very important because we celebrate unity and diversity. Because in ASEAN, we recognize that each country has its own cultures with an S. Why? Because, when you go to Indonesia, when you go to the Philippines, no, even in Malaysia and some other countries in the Southeast Asia, you would notice that there is no uniform culture. Even in Singapore, with a country that is, relatively smaller than other Southeast Asian countries, you still have a mixture of different cultures inside, no, occupying a country or a state. So in ASEAN, we celebrate diversity, no, and we are in unity in celebrating that diversity. Okay, so we have to be curious of ASEAN cultures because what we basically have, similarities, parallelisms, and as much as we have these similarities, we also have our own distinct identities. Okay, so moving on. Okay, where did I begin my curiosity of ASEAN cultures? And I think this storytelling, this kwentuhan, would never be complete if I don't um, share something about PNU involved and my other engagements through the Faculty of Arts and Languages. You see, my curiosity of ASEAN cultures started through that, that unassuming small office beside Alumni Relations Hall, no, which we call LIO, no, the Linkages and International Office. Of course, LIO is now occupying Aquarium right now, but back then, the office was small, but it's like a melting pot of people, of students coming from different faculties, of different backgrounds, different, identities, different characteristics. And so from this diversity that was, embodied in the organization, we tried to look into our similarities, which is what curiosity in, ASEAN cultures, and not just ASEAN cultures in particular, but all cultures locally and internationally. It's interesting because through Leo, I was able to meet visitors coming from Southeast Asian countries and countries outside Southeast Asia without necessarily leaving the Philippines. Okay, so as a youth volunteer, as a student volunteer in LIO, we were tasked to serve as tour guides. So we were really forced to know the history of PNU, to know the history of Intramuros, the history of landmarks in Intramuros, in Rizal Park. No, I experienced touring our visitors around malls in the metro. Some of our volunteers accompany them in their excursions outside Metro Manila. We bring them to Quiapo, we bring them to Divisoria. So basically, as I try to tour them around to accommodate them, to show Filipino hospitality to them. No, in the process, I also get to deepen my understanding of my Filipino roots. And while I'm touring, I'm touring these visitors, in these activities, I also get to understand where they are coming from because when we go to Luneta Park, for instance, and they see Jose Rizal, no, it's interesting that they know about Rizal and that they have, some conceptions about Rizal that are not necessarily, familiar to me. So I also learn from them. And I also learn about their culture because from time to time, these visitors would share stories about how it is in, for example, Japan, how it is in Thailand, Indonesia, etc., etc. And I remember um, we toured like Malaysians in Divisoria. They were like taking pictures in Divisoria. So we were like super, super alarmed because, Divisoria is a very, very unpredictable place. But I think, no, according to them, they have similar places to Divisoria in Malaysia. Okay, so there's nothing really much to worry about, while, they know what to do. So in this case, I learn about them. I see our, similarities with them. I see our differences as well, and it leads me to appreciate, who I am as a Filipino and as a citizen of ASEAN. Okay, and more than that, I think the Faculty of Arts and Languages also has afforded me some opportunities to explore Southeast Asia, because it is through the Faculty of Arts and Languages that I got selected for the Sea Teacher project. And also, I was involved in Project Teach, where we developed like modules for English language lessons of our Thai teachers. And of course, while we were developing modules, we had to study their culture. We had to study where they're coming from, okay, so that we could provide them with a more contextualized learning experience. Okay, so it's basically because of PNU that I began to harness this curiosity in me about ASEAN cultures. Okay, so thank you so much to PNU and PNU involved. No, this is a shameless plug. If you are an in-service, a pre-service teacher rather in PNU, don't miss the opportunity to join PNU involved because it's really life-changing. There's no other organization that could offer you an enriching experience of knowing your culture, your heritage, and history other than PNU involved. So I think PNU involved should pay me for this. Anyway, that's a joke. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so where have I been in ASEAN? Okay, aside from Indonesia, aside from project Sea Teacher project, I've been to some countries also in Southeast Asia to participate in other activities. Like for instance, in 2017, that's my first time to go abroad, and I'm very, very lucky because I have friends, in Kuala Lumpur who are very, very much accommodating. And guess what? No, I met them in Manila, and we were like the tour guides, their tour guides when they were in Manila. So we sort of like took care of them and in their stay here in Manila. So when I went to Kuala Lumpur, when I went to Malaysia, I immediately contacted my friend Hazim, to tell him that I'm going to Kuala Lumpur, and whatnot. So Hazim, generously welcomed me and hosted me in Kuala Lumpur. So as you can see, when you try to explore other cultures, you also create relationships that last. You create networks, okay? But of course, our goal is to help each other. Up until now, Hazim and I were like, talking to each other and helping each other also in our own initiatives and projects. So there, when I was in Kuala Lumpur, it's for a Model United Nations conference. So you see here like the middle picture with a girl on costume. That's actually during the cultural night. No, so it's nice to see because most of the performers there were coming from ASEAN countries. Okay, for the cultural night. So I got to see all of these costumes, all of these dances, performances, songs. No, I heard these songs firsthand. No, but when I was still studying, I only see them in books. Only listen to them through tape recording. But there I was in 2017, no, watching all of these performances, seeing all these wonderful, wonderful people wearing their costumes in person. So I was also able to visit the school where Hazim was teaching or was serving as a guidance counselor or a guidance teacher. No, I think in your in the rightmost picture, you'll see there the principal of the school. Okay, and in the picture to the left of um the the photo with the girl on costume, you'll see there the guidance teachers also, other guidance teachers in that school. So we were able to like discuss things, no, talk about our teaching experiences in our countries, etc., etc. And it surprised me because when I went to Malaysia, they know about Pia Wurtzbach. You know, we were talking about Pia Wurtzbach. We also talked about Jericho Rosales and Christine Hermosa for Pangako Sa'yo, and they made me sing the theme song. No, my goodness. Anyway, um, I hope I gave justice to it. But you know, essentially, no, when you go abroad and when you try to visit ASEAN countries, the people that you encounter as are as excited as you are to know your culture, to know each other's culture. Okay, so you know, both of you are excited to get to know each other. So what I wish to emphasize now is to take advantage of that opportunity, of that excitement, of that shared excitement between you and the foreign person, no, the foreigner. Okay? Because it's your opportunity to share your culture and also to learn other people's culture and to hear their narratives, to hear their voices, and to hear how they see the world around them. Okay, and I think the picture in the leftmost is one of my most memorable experiences in Kuala Lumpur. It's a night stroll, I think in Bukit Bintang, where I saw McDonald's in Malaysia, and the house I saw how different it was as compared to the McDonald's that we have here in the Philippines. It's interesting because it's my first time to go abroad back then, so I really cherish that opportunity and that experience, and I really thank Nad, Hazim, and Karul for hosting me there. And you know what? It's not just going to beautiful places, strolling around, talking to people. We also talked about some social issues. You know, we talked about um, how China is affecting the domestic policies in Malaysia. They also shared how China is infiltrating our domestic policies. So we also like talk about issues. It's not all like glitz and glamour when you go abroad. You also have to talk to actual people, no, and in order to know how they view certain issues, or probably to understand, to appreciate also their own issues in their homeland. And in that process, you also begin to discover yourself. Na you begin to compare yourself, your experiences to them. So when you try to do that, you also begin to notice, even the simple things, even the simple things that make up your whole self. No, like for example, when I went to Malaysia and Indonesia, no, I noticed that when we ate out, no, in fast food chains, restaurants, or even like local fast food, no, I noticed that people actually eat with their bare hands. Okay, and prior to going to Indonesia and Malaysia, I sort of have that prejudice over these people who eat with their bare hands whenever they're like eating in fast food chains or whenever they're outside their homes. Primarily because I was, socialized. I was taught um, under the Western tradition, no, that we have to use spoon and fork, no, without really explaining to me why we have to use spoon and fork, or without really explaining to me that Filipinos back then really eat with their bare hands, and it's not only a thing like of the poor. No, because when I went to Malaysia and when I went to Indonesia, I'm with like young professionals, I'm with university students, I'm with teachers who are eating with their bare hands. So it's really a cultural thing. Okay, and eating this experience, if I did not go abroad, I wouldn't be able to take note of it. Like, yeah, eating with my bare hands isn't supposed to be an issue. It's a part of me. It's my heritage. It's my identity. It's my identity. Okay? So when you go abroad, you will begin to appreciate the small things, that make up your Filipino identity. Okay? And you'll begin to understand all the more what it means to become a Filipino. Okay? So there. Next, in that's in Malaysia in 2017. In 2018, I went to Cambodia together with my research team, Samantha, Cheska, and Angel. And also, we were joined by Dr. Alido and Professor Papango, our professors in the Faculty of Arts and Languages. And in Cambodia, it was my first time to ride a tuk-tuk. Okay, so that tuk-tuk picture, in the middle, um, was actually taken out just outside the airport, just before my tuk-tuk driver took me to my hotel. Okay, so I did not, I took advantage of the opportunity. Na okay, I'm inside the tuk-tuk, so it's a photo opportunity. So yeah, and riding a tuk-tuk isn't something that you'll experience in the Philippines. And I think the first reminder that I got from a Cambodian is to not let my things just unattended. Not to leave my things unattended, even inside the tuk-tuk. So it's not okay that I just drop my bag beside me and not attend to it anymore. No, so going back, I realized that yeah, it's pretty much like Manila also, because things like this are are prevalent in whichever society you are in or community you are in. Okay, and I think also one of my most memorable experiences in Cambodia is when we went to the night market. So thank you, Angel, for taking us to the night market. Um, for the first time ever, in that night market, I ate street food, no, not standing, no, not sitting on chairs, but just lying down on a mat. And this mat is covering pretty much a huge space, and there's no organization whatsoever. So you can just lie down wherever you want to lie down, wherever there's space. So it's like it's nice, no, it's nice to experience that, no, like you're sitting just beside a local or even tourists. I think when we were like eating during that night, there was another group of Filipinos who are doing travel for their vacation. So we also got to meet them and talk to them. And also it's interesting because in the Philippines, no, you all most of the time you'll only get to encounter or talk to people who are part of your community or society. Like if you're in Metro Manila, most of the people that you'll get to talk to are from Manila. But when you go abroad, you'll see other Filipinos coming from different places in the Philippines, and each of them have their own stories to tell. So it's also, one of the most remarkable experiences and realizations that I had, when I went to Cambodia. No, and here also in the rightmost picture, here's a picture of a pagoda. No, and I took a picture of it um because I think back then we were like walking a lot and I felt pagoda already. The joke. No, that's only a joke. Okay, so now after that, let me bring you to another journey in 2018, which is now in Bandung, Indonesia. But I did not, put pictures there because that's gonna be like the highlight of our sharing this morning. So firstly, why am I even in Bandung, last 2018? I was there as part of the pre-service student-teacher exchange in Southeast Asia, or the Sea Teacher Project. And I owe it to Ma'am Alido, to Ma'am Anisho, to the rest of the Faculty of Arts and Languages, to Dr. Regalado also, and to the Linkages and International Office that I was able to participate as a cultural exchange student in this project. Now, according to CIMEO, the Sea Teacher Project, or the Pre-Service Student-Teacher Exchange in Southeast Asia, is a project that aims to provide opportunity for pre-service student teachers from universities in Southeast Asia to have teaching experience or practicum in schools in other countries in Southeast Asia. Okay, so it's a 1 month practicum experience abroad, in Southeast Asia for for the cultural participants or cultural exchange students. And what's interesting about the Sea Teacher project is that, students wouldn't get to choose where they would be deployed to, or which university, which country, which city even. So it's interesting because it makes you like excited. No, it makes you nervous at the same time, but in a good way. No, that you're gonna be assigned to a country, assigned to a school that probably is new to you. Okay, that's most probably new to you. Okay, so and when I got into like the program, when I flew to Bandung and arrived at my host universities, I realized also that we're not the only ones who are hosted by the university, by UP. Okay, I'm also with other Filipinos again who have their own stories to tell, who have their own experiences, and also in my batch in UP, we were joined by Thai students also, who are also of different cultural backgrounds. They're also coming from different parts of Thailand. So it's really, a cultural encounter as much as it is a practicum also. Okay? The Sea Teacher project has the following objectives. Firstly, to enable pre-service student teachers to develop their teaching skills and pedagogy. Second, to encourage the pre-service student teachers to practice their English skills. Third, to allow the pre-service student teachers to gain a broader regional and world view. And lastly, to expose future teachers, to diverse teaching and learning um, opportunities and the value of flexibility. Okay? So interesting because the objectives of the Sea Teacher project, therefore, is threefold. Firstly, now it's for pedagogy. Okay? It's for, teacher training. That's the first fold. The second fold is on English language practice. Now, in order for us to hone our English language skills. And lastly, to gain a broader regional and world view, which means that it has something to do with culture. That's why, under the Sea Teacher project, UP has provided us, my host university, has provided us with a good balance of practicum experience and cultural experience. No? And aside from that, they also provide us with opportunities to talk with each other, to get to know each other, like all the cultural exchange students through their student volunteers. Okay, so as you can see, in your screens, no, in the rightmost photo, that's my acceptance letter in UP, no, and you'll see the logo of UP in the leftmost photo. That's Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. Okay, it's sort of like the PNU in Bandung, and my host school, like my school, no, where I did my practicum, the school where I did my practicum was Pelitano Santara Boarding School. It's an international school, super far away from Bandung. So my experience is very, very interesting because every time I go to school, no, for my practicum, I had to ride a grab bike. No, it's very, very interesting because there's no grab bike in the Philippines, and I'm this kind of person who enjoys talking to people who are foreign to me. So whenever I ride grab bike, I always talk to the driver because in Indonesia it's always like traffic also. So when it's traffic, when cars aren't moving, I talk to grab bike drivers, and one of the most memorable conversations I had with an Indonesian grab bike driver was about Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao is so popular, and I think this Indonesian idolizes Manny Pacquiao, and of course, I wouldn't paint a bad image of Manny Pacquiao to him, so I supported him and I shared him how Pacquiao helps the poor in the Philippines and whatnot. So it's interesting because in the Philippines we may have a different conception of Manny Pacquiao, but abroad Pacquiao is a different kind of person to them. Okay, and also I think one experience that I had in Grab car, no, I think this Grab car driver recognized that we were like speaking in Filipino, so he started conversing with us, no, and then he told us that his wife is actually a Filipina and he goes to Quezon City from time to time, and they met because of an online game. I forgot the online game, but they met through an online game. So just imagine, no? We have more, similarities. Um, we have more similarities with them, no, than what we know, no, before going to these countries. Okay, so it would surprise you. It would surprise you how much they know about the Philippines, when you go abroad. Okay, so here is how my sharing would go. Okay, first I'll be sharing to you my experiences. Secondly, we'll talk about my reflections about these experiences, and then we'll talk briefly about how these experiences and reflections affected my profession, the way I practice teaching. Okay, experiences. Firstly, this is during the orientation and deployment. So the the welcoming program rather was held at Villa Isola in UP. Okay, and then we had a campus tour after. As you can see, this is me, and beside me is Kim, my classmate, who was also a cultural exchange program student. And then you have here like our assigned student volunteers and other cultural exchange students here, coming from all over the Philippines and parts of Thailand. Okay, it's interesting. Okay, next. This is during our deployment to Pelita Nusantara boarding school. Um, you can see here my practicum supervisor, Mr. Edwin Grafitama, no, who's very very kind, and who's very very generous with compliments and um, tips on how I could be a better teacher. And I think when we went to Pelitano Santara, we were also welcomed by student volunteers who introduced us, who toured us around the campus. Okay, so next. This is during my actual teaching practicum. I was able to handle grade 7 and grade 8 students under the Cambridge curriculum. So this is basically the international class, okay? Because Pilitano Santara School is a boarding school, which means that there are students who live in school, and it's also an international school. And it's also interesting because they have a section for regular students, they have a section for international students, and they have a separate section for military students. No, more on that later. Okay, so I was able to handle reading and writing courses for grade 7 and grade 8 under the Cambridge curriculum. So as you can see here, those are my students, and those are our class activities. Okay, I was also able to handle a grade 11 class, an international class again, um, for the course Global Perspective. So it's basically like an English course, but in here, students are asked to research and to share their research to the class about social issues. No, so that's why, as you can see, I'm just sitting there listening to the students and trying to process also what the student has researched on. Okay, um, it's a memorable experience because I think I wouldn't be able to handle a Cambridge curriculum class if I do my practicum in the Philippines, because usually we're deployed to public schools. So it's like a totally different experience. Okay, teaching or doing my practicum abroad. Okay, so I was also able to handle grade 11 classes, regular classes, not international classes, for Bahasa Inggris, or this is the national curriculum. This is their English course in Indonesia. So the black and white photo shows my regular students, no, and the photo below it shows um, my military school students, no, my military students. Okay, and I would like to show to you a clip, no, about my experience teaching the military section.
Awal kelas 11 telah menyelesaikan pelajaran bahasa Inggris. Pelan-pelan selesai. Bubarkan. Bubarkan. Silat. Istirahat. Diam.
Okay, that's basically their class representative reporting to me their class attendance in my class. So it's also very very interesting how the class is set up for the military section, because I first I was afraid. No, of course this is not something that I see in Philippine classrooms. I've never had an experience of this when I was still in the Philippines. But I was afraid because it's new, but I kept an open mind, and I figured that teaching the military class is a lot easier than teaching the regular class because the military students are more disciplined. When you ask them to do something, they do it, and they're also fun to be with. And they take photos all the time. They share things with me. I think there's one student who also gave me an oil, who gave me a traditional oil. And in exchange, I gave that student a beep card because they haven't seen a beep card before in Bandung, because I think in Bandung there's no like LRTs also because it's a province. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. It's a new experience. So these are like experiences that I'm sure I wouldn't be able to have if I do my practicum in the Philippines. Okay, but also I did my practicum in the Philippines, like the second half of it. Okay, so there, it's also interesting how I was able to talk to certain students in my classes and to discover how they view the Philippines, how they view other ASEAN countries. So we shared stories with each other. They told me tales like folk tales in Indonesia, and I shared to them like stories in the Philippines. So it's nice to see Indonesia, or Bandung for that matter, in the eyes of these students, in the eyes of these like children, because it's different when you're browsing through Bandung online, or when you're welcomed in the university. It's a different thing. No, so you'll get to know Indonesia all the more. No, when you or you'll get to know a country, a place all the more if you listen to the stories, the varied stories of their locals, and all of these stories are equally valid. Okay, so there. So cultural exposure, I got to eat Indonesian food also, and we were able to visit some sites like Asia Africa Conference Museum, a Catholic church in Indonesia, Kawaputi, no, a volcano. It's so cold there, no, it's very very cold, and it's my first time also to enter a mosque in Indonesia. So it's an experience that I'll cherish. Also, we were able to climb up the observatory. I'm not sure how it's called, but like the top of the tower. So yeah, it's a nice experience. Okay, and along the way, you also get to talk to locals. I remember going to Alpha Mart to purchase a plane ticket, and then um it since I'm a foreigner, so we had like barriers to communication, and I found myself like initially I was talking to just one attendant, and then I found myself like after 15-10 minutes that there's like a group of them attending to me. So it's interesting because it's a new experience, no, and it tried to um it tried to um make me realize, no, the situation made me realize that I have to be more strategic, no, with my skills, and I wouldn't be able to claim that I'm an English teacher if I wouldn't be able to get the message across, no, to people who have limited fluency in English. Okay, next, reflections. No, I'm nearing the end. Okay, what have I learned about my student exchange program? Okay, my practicum in Bandung. Okay, key reflections. First, no, exposure to foreign culture triggers curiosity to own culture. As I told you earlier, no, my example about eating with bare hands, no, that mattered a lot to me. It's just a simple thing that I neglected since time immemorial, no, and not until I saw people really like eating with their bare hands outside, no. So and it's something that I should be proud of, no, as a Filipino and as a citizen of ASEAN also. Okay, that I have my own identity. Okay, next, also, when you go abroad, you go back and forth, know your memory of the Philippines. Like, is it how things are done also in the Philippines? No, or are their perspectives of the Philippines the same as yours? The same as yours? So you also begin to question your understanding of the Philippines when you go abroad. So in that process of um being in the process of questioning yourself, you also begin to get curious about your own culture. So as much as you're curious about the culture of others, you also begin to to become curious of your own culture. And I think that's very, very important because when you begin to be curious of your own culture, then you'll try to learn more about it, research on it, understand it, appreciate it, and at the end of the day, you'll just find yourself being decolonized, no? Just like the theme of the Buwan ng Wika this month, diba? Or this year, okay? Decolonization. So when the teachers are decolonized, no, where their experiences are decolonized, then that's also the time that they can decolonize the experiences of their students. No, because the problem of the Philippine education system is that, our education system is not, it's not so cultural Filipino. It's not so Filipino. It doesn't necessarily promote so much Filipino thinking. No, so I think it's very, very important to decolonize ourselves in the process so that we could also decolonize the experiences of our students and make them more aware of social realities. Secondly, experiences and exposure are fundamental sources of cultural knowledge. Again, you could not, you know, decolonize your students if you haven't decolonized yourself as a teacher. No, and you wouldn't be able to share experiences if you haven't had any experiences at all. So you wouldn't say that you're culturally sensitive. You wouldn't say that you are a multicultural teacher if you haven't seen yourself, if you haven't found yourself in a situation, filled with people of different contexts, backgrounds, and cultures. So you really have that responsibility to explore, to expose yourself to diverse cultures. Okay. Third, effective pedagogy requires active cultural engagement. Again, it's only when we connect and try to establish authentic relationship with our students that we could be responsive to their needs, to their contexts, no, to their characteristics. Okay. And lastly, no, a humanizing pedagogy involves connecting different cultures because I think in the 21st century, it's very, very important that our students are not only aware of what's happening in the Philippines, but they're also aware of what's happening outside the Philippines because they are global. We are all global citizens. But in order for us, no, to realize how the social system works in real life, no, we have to show them actual examples. We have to share them actual stories. And how are we gonna do that? No, by inviting actual, real resource persons. Okay, by bringing with them. No, when you experience like the things abroad yourself, you become like a valid focal person inside the classroom. So it's really the responsibility of the teacher to expose, him or herself to various and diverse cultures. Okay, so how did I apply all of these experiences and reflections now to my profession? Okay, just some examples. Firstly, um, as you can see, I connect my students to um, our ASEAN friends. No, I think this is a media and information literacy class, and I think our topic was um, media in Southeast Asia. So, in order for us to better understand how different, how different it is, no, how different media is rather in different ASEAN countries, I connected them to first to a group of teachers in Malaysia. No, like the left photo shows my students together with Malaysian teachers. No, they're trying to discuss Malaysian press. And then I also have here like another class with a Thai teacher, no, a Thai teacher who I met in the Philippines, no, who I met in the Philippines. I invited I invited her to talk about freedom of the press, no, in Thailand. So in this case, no, they're not only reading um the press in Southeast Asia through their books. No, they're not only like learning about it through me. No, they're like hearing stories, no, coming from people who actually live in these countries. Okay. So next, I have here. I'm currently moderating the Animo Model United Nations, which is the official MUN organization of the De La Salle University Integrated School, both for Manila and Laguna campuses. So I extend my advocacy of global citizenship, no concern for global affairs and issues to my students. No, because in MUN we discuss affairs. No, just recently, no, my students mounted a webinar on um, Israeli-Palestine dispute. No, we also discuss here several other pressing social issues, and we try to find solutions to these social issues. No, so because going going abroad, no, visiting other ASEAN countries made me realize that I have to take part, no, an active involvement, no, in solving not just the problems of the Philippines, but also the problems of other ASEAN countries, because the problems in other ASEAN countries affect our domestic affairs. We are all connected in some way. Okay. Next, now this is my very very um favorite part of it, because traveling to ASEAN countries made me realize that there are stories to tell and there's a lot to learn, no, outside the classroom. So I think no, I also became one of the crafters of the service learning curriculum of two subjects in DLSUIS, CSC and DS, where we expose our students to actual field work. So they get to mingle with kids, no, in the Aita community, in our partner community. They got to hear their stories. They got to see their situation from their perspective and not just from an outsider's perspective. So it brings me joy to see like my students carrying these children, talking talking to the locals, because who would have thought that Lasallian students could be like this, no, could be able to hold conversations with normal people, like underprivileged people like this. Okay, so we were able to teach our students also the value of listening to the stories of people coming from different cultures, because culture is not only like you don't only encounter foreign culture when you go abroad. You also encounter foreign culture locally, because Lasallian students and these people from the Aita community, our partner community, have different contexts and different backgrounds, and there's so much to learn about each other's experiences. Okay, and we're able to clarify that they are not there as messianic figures to help them, but they are working together, because in the process, no, they're helping the Aita community, and the Aita community is also helping them. No, no, it's a two-way dialogic learning process. Okay, and also our faculty are involved. No, just recently, I think last year, when restrictions relaxed a little bit, we're able to hold like outreach activities in our partner school. And lastly, no, I began to appreciate the importance all the more of volunteering. So when things were normal back then, no, before the pandemic and the Taal eruptions, and before getting busy with my weekend engagement with my master's degree, no, my master's program, no, I volunteer, no, in Tondo, no, and teach students every weekend, like grade 7 to grade 12 students. Because why? No, because I wish to learn from them also. I wish to know their stories, because I may be teaching in De La Salle University Integrated School, and being exposed to these students who are like sons and daughters of politicians, businessmen, etc., etc., makes me a little, disconnected to social realities. And these people volunteering help me connect myself to the greater social sphere, and not forget that, I am a teacher for development. I am just not just a teacher inside the classroom. I am a teacher with an advocacy, and I am a teacher for social change. Okay, and these kids, these students, these volunteering activities remind me all the time that I have to work extra hard in order to humanize my students inside the classroom and outside the classroom. Okay, so what are my key messages for you this morning? Okay, I know it's been a long talk, but I hope that you've learned something from our short kwentuhan. Firstly, it is our responsibility as teachers to expose ourselves to different cultures. No, it's our responsibility. We are bound to do it. No, because we could not prepare our students not to face the real world if we ourselves haven't faced the real world. No? It takes two to tango, and you cannot give what you don't have. Okay? Next, cultural exposure should not just be about fun and enjoyment. As I've shared to you earlier, no, it's also about connecting to people, no, um, understanding where they're coming from, appreciating their victories, sympathizing with them or empathizing with them on their downfalls, struggles, etc., etc. And you share the joy also in their triumphs. Okay, it's not just all about fun, picture taking, glamorous activity. No, it's not. It's not that. No, cultural exposure should bring about like a realization on you about real social situations. Okay, cultural curiosity leads to an improved pedagogy and social consciousness, because when you try to, you know, to uphold cultural curiosity, no, in you, then you'll begin to recognize also that each individual, no, each student inside your classroom has his or her own story, and you have to listen to these stories. And our goal is not to silence them. Our goal is to make their stories, their voices more pronounced. No, because their stories are valid. No, what's lacking are the ears to hear them out. So we have to lend them our ears, no, so that we could hear the stories of our students, and in that way, we'll be able to be more responsive. No, we'll be able to become more responsive of their needs and effective, no, as a teacher. Next, a humanizing classroom is one that bridges cultures. So you try to connect your students to other ASEAN people, no, to other ASEAN resident citizens, no, through your networks. And if you cannot do that across Southeast Asia, you can do it locally. Like if you have friends um, from Mindanao, if you have friends from Visayas, or if you have friends from Luzon, invite them over in your classes. No, especially now that we are all doing online classes. So take this opportunity that everybody is more available than before. Okay, because they can just record their talk. They don't necessarily have to be physically present. All you need to do is to invite them. Okay, because our students, we owe it to our students to give them authentic learning experiences. Okay? Okay, so I think I was able to share with you all the things that I wish to share this morning. So, sa muli, ako si Ian at sumainyo ang PNU Talks. You may contact me via my email address should you have any questions or concerns about my presentation. And please don't forget to like and share our episode for this morning. Thank you so much, and may you have a nice day ahead of you.